and welcome to the BetterU Podcast, where we go in depth and get to listen to stories of hope, strength, and courage straight from some of the leading health, fitness, and wellness experts who help transform lives one person at a time. I am your host, RKaye, and today we are joined by the lovely Alisha Carlson, founder and creator and podcast host of the StrongHER Way. Did I pronounce that correctly?
You did. Good job, RKaye.
Hey. All right. So thank you so much for joining us today, Alisha. And I am very, very interested. And I pretty much looked through a lot of your social media already. Always on stalker mode whenever I have guests on the show. But it's very interesting to me that you say, or you share that you have gone through, the extreme phases of being a couch potato and also being a physique competitor. So could you tell us more today about how your entire journey began and how you finally decided to tell yourself, okay, I really, really want to help other people?
Yeah. So I think if we kind of go way back to probably middle school was really where I started to notice that I just felt like my body was always just a little bit bigger than that of my friends. I felt like I can remember constantly comparing myself to them. I would say probably as I got into high school and sort of throughout high school, early 20s, I really started to notice, or I thought, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with my body. It doesn't look like what I'm seeing in the media. It doesn't look like what I'm seeing on TV and magazines. And I always, still kind of carried that belief that I was so much bigger than the rest of my friends. And so I would say, throughout high school, I kind of tinkered with dieting and weight loss. And what I mean by that is I would, start working out, or I would be like, okay, I'm going on a diet, I'm going to try this thing to lose weight. And I would stay with it for a few days and, I'm not seeing results. Like I'm checking in the mirror every single day. I'm hopping on the scale. Nothing is changing. And I would get discouraged. I would get defeated, and I would be like, okay, this isn't working. And so I would quit. And when I say couch potato, sports were never something that were really a big priority in my family. I did do some sports kind of throughout high school and just sort of periodically, but my parents didn't work out. Exercise and fitness and a healthy lifestyle wasn't really modeled for me. And so I spent a lot of my time, watching TV. At the time, AOL, I really aged myself, but AOL was like the big thing, that might have been like the very first social media thing. And so I'd spend time like chatting with my friends, and we would hang out and stuff like that. And I really wasn't too worried about what I was eating. It was just, I ate probably a lot more processed food than I should have. And that definitely didn't help, my weight or my health. And so that was kind of the cycle that I found myself in pretty consistently, I would say, until I was 21. And then, of course, once I turned 21, I'm drinking a lot more, we're eating out a ton, and just really didn't have any regard for my body, for myself, really, if I'm being honest. Like, I didn't have a good relationship with myself at all. And that showed in the way that I was treating my body, treating myself. So I think it was 2007 is when things kind of shifted for me. So this was when I'm like, okay, I've got to get serious about this. I'm getting married this year. I want to look good. I want to feel good on my big day. And my fiance at the time, his work every January did kind of like a Biggest Loser type challenge, where it was just sort of this fitness or everybody get healthy challenge. And so he started kind of running, and I was like, okay, if he's doing it, like I'll just join in with him. And I kind of stuck with that. So I really say like running was kind of my gateway into the fitness world, into, my own personal journey. And I went on to, I think I just downloaded like a free Couch to 5K program because it just gave me, very specific mileage every day. It seemed doable. And then I started signing up for races. So I did a handful of 5Ks. And then it was like, okay, I think I could do a 10K. And so I pushed myself and trained for a 10K. And then eventually I was like, okay, I think I can do a half marathon. And so I signed up, did the half marathon. And, I was making changes to my nutrition at the time as well. I really kind of went down the rabbit hole of clean eating. And what I will say about that is I do still strongly believe that the less processed food we eat in general, that's going to be the most the most advantageous to our health. However, and we can kind of dive into this a little bit, it can also become something that can be very triggering of fear around food and can also kind of trigger some disordered behaviors, I think, around eating as well. So I'm, making these changes to my nutrition, I'm running these races, and my body is changing on the outside. But I still noticed that I kind of had, it never felt like it was quite enough. I felt like, oh, I needed to be a little bit skinnier, or I needed to, lose a little bit more body fat or something like that. And so naturally I'm like, let's, go into bodybuilding. And so I sort of transitioned. I started kind of lifting and running at the same time. And then I think it was 2011, my husband and I and our 6-month-old son at the time, because we didn't want to leave him for the weekend. We went to Vegas and went to the Mr. Olympia. And I already knew that I wanted to compete. And so that was such a cool experience to be able to go and see these people that are kind of at the top of their game. And so I sort of pivoted out of the running, went more into weightlifting, more into the bodybuilding stuff, and ended up doing a handful of shows in 2012. And, I was so thankful for that time and everything that it taught me, everything, just developing the discipline and the focus. But also, what I saw really come out of the bodybuilding was a very disordered and unhealthy relationship to food, to the scale, to my body. I dieted down, and I think probably when I stepped on stage, I was maybe around 10% body fat. And for several months post the shows, I hovered. I, stayed really close to 11-12% and still felt like, there was something going on. I've never been diagnosed with an eating disorder, but I think the more that I study it, I'm like, I definitely can see some of the tendencies. And ironically, I think a lot of people that end up going into the bodybuilding probably have kind of that predisposition for that. Not everybody, but you do see a lot of that kind of unhealthy stuff. So really, it was through my fitness journey, the running, the physique shows or the figure shows is why I do what I do now, which is more of that non-diet centered approach to, how do we live a healthy, active, fit lifestyle? But, that's got to be mentally, emotionally, relationally, it's kind of that whole package.
I understand. And I do see that a lot of people do have that tendency to, progress through their own journey. And then in the middle of it, you're like, I think this is healthy, but technically it really isn't. So I'm very interested in how you work with other women and helping them to ditch the diet mentality. Could you tell us more about that? Because I think these days a lot more women do have a tendency to have such quote unquote such a bad relationship with food, and we really tend to either it's all or nothing. It's that kind of mentality. So could you share with us how you help other people ditch the diet?
Yeah, I will. I do want to say one of the best things that I feel like has really come out of the fitness journey is being able to break past some of those limiting beliefs that I had around like, oh, I'm not a runner, or, oh, all of these things. And so I don't want to paint that as like this like crazy negative journey. I think there were so many positives that came out of it. I think initially I was thinking, oh, my life is going to get so much better when my body looks a certain way, when the scale reads a certain way. And it may not be your body for you, but maybe you're thinking, when I have this job, or when I make X amount of money, or when I have, this husband and this family. And so I think that really kind of pivots into the foundation of the work that I do with my clients. At the very core of it, we're working on our relationship to ourselves. Right? It's like so often we're pursuing these goals because we're either trying to feel loved, we're trying to feel like we're enough, or we're seeking some sort of safety, right? And it could be kind of a combination of all of those things. And so as long as we are pursuing goals from that place of like, once I have the goal, then I'm going to feel this way about myself, you're going to get to the goal and it's never going to be quite enough. And so, we do work on, just the relationship that we have to ourselves. We work on our food relationship, right? So this is exploring a lot of the behaviors and the patterns and really just the way that we think about food and just being intentional, right? It's like so often we're kind of handed down the beliefs and the behaviors, the things that we saw growing up, the things that we see out in on TikTok or Instagram or, wherever you're kind of looking for those role models. And we don't really stop to question, is that something that is going to work for me? Is that something that I actively want to choose and to participate in? Or we just think like, oh, this is just sort of the way that we're supposed to do it, the way that it's supposed to be. And so a lot of the work is first, it's kind of like uncovering, okay, what are your current habits and behaviors? What do you kind of think about food or your body or the scale right now? And what of that is working? What do you want to keep? But then challenging some of the things that don't really work, which like you alluded is kind of that all or nothing mentality, right? Or there are good and there are bad foods. But it's like when we are coming at it from that place, it's always going to be all or nothing. And usually that's where I find people are relying on willpower. They're feeling deprived. They're feeling really restricted around food. And when we can start to remove some of that, then we can start to just make decisions that really ultimately end up aligning more so with the goals or the healthy and the fit lifestyle that we want to be living.
That is absolutely, something that a lot of our listeners should be able to also look into. There is not really something that is absolute for one person. Each person has their own journey. Each person has, something that they have to kind of get past, get over. And so aside from, mentality towards food, you also, of course, help your clients with movement and stay active, right? And of course, these days, we do know, you did mention like TikTok and social media and all of that. As a coach, as someone who helps others to become better, is there something or specific information out there that you absolutely like, every time you see it, you're absolutely like, why are you sharing this? Is there a particular fitness or health myth that you would like to debunk for us today that you absolutely just need to share with everyone for them to just say, no, just don't go and believe that?
Well, I feel like it is really hard to just kind of narrow one down. I mean, one of the things, and this isn't necessarily like a myth, but one of the things I really want to speak to, and this kind of piggybacks off of the all or nothing mentality, but it's approaching your health and fitness journey through like a perfectionistic lens, right? So it's like, I can never miss a workout. I have to eat like everything according to plan, or else I'm not going to get results. And this kind of goes back to, what are you attaching? What part of your identity, your value, your worth are you attaching to reaching the goal? One of the things that kind of comes to mind I guess if I could speak to this a little bit, is the whole calories in, calories out. Now, we know that energy balance is something that is necessary for, body comp changes, weight loss. If you're wanting to put weight on, we know that that is definitely a part of it. I think that there is a lot of nuance or other things that are not necessarily considered when we're looking at the calories in, calories out. You kind of alluded to, there's not a one size fits all program. And in that same token, not all of our bodies are going to respond to a specific workout stimulus or plan or program in the same fashion. We're not all going to respond to the same diet or the same nutrition protocol in the same way, right? Like you and I could be put on the same program. We could eat exactly the same. Our results are not necessarily going to be the same. And so I think sometimes, especially when we're looking at TikTok and Instagram, it's important to recognize that just because something worked for somebody else and they got results doing this, or this worked for them, I think you could be setting yourself up for some disappointment and to really beat yourself up if you follow what they're guiding you on and you don't get the same results. And so I think that's where it's important to really work with somebody that knows what they're talking about, can really help you kind of formulate a plan and tweak it according to the results that you're actually getting in real time, rather than you just trying to figure it out on your own. And so I think, just some of those nuances, right? It's we all are going to absorb different amounts of calories, right? So it's if you and I eat a cheeseburger, I might absorb more of the energy, more of the calories than you do, right? Or even if you eat, a quarter cup of almonds versus the equivalent of almond butter, if you eat the almond butter, you're going to absorb more of the calories and the fat and things like that from the almond butter than you are from the almonds. So while yes, calories in, calories out is definitely a factor in changing your body, either losing or gaining, there is a little bit more that goes into it. And so I think that's where sometimes the frustration can come when people are counting calories, counting macros, is that it can feel I feel like I'm doing everything right. And maybe you are being super meticulous and you're weighing everything out and you're following the plan to a T, but there could be some other factors kind of going on as well. And that, that kind of lends itself a little bit to what's happening hormonally, which for women, we know we can be all over the board throughout the month, throughout different phases of our life and things like that.
I love that you got to share that, because a lot of people really do need to learn more about it, that not everything that you get to see out there will, bring you the exact same results that you see. A lot of people get into fitness when, let's say, a friend or a family member kind of looks entirely transformed, right? So you're like, what did you do? And then when you try to do it and then it doesn't give the same result as the friend or the family member that you had, you kind of go where did I go wrong?
Yeah.
You did mention a little while back that it is important to have people to really guide you and coach you. And as a coach, has there ever been a very special moment, a client of yours that has truly become maybe your poster woman out there, and who has really transformed from the first day that you met her to now? Would you be able to share maybe a story of someone who you helped change?
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking of so many different clients right now, because I genuinely love each and every one of my clients. I love working with them, and it's hard to kind of narrow it down, but I'm thinking about one client in particular. She unexpectedly lost her husband last year. He passed away. And she has kind of been on a weight loss journey for years. I mean, she had done a lot of the typical dieting and had some, quote unquote, great results for a while. But then it was like the scale just kept coming up. And so this kind of goes back to the whole calories in, calories out. She thought she just needed to reduce her calories even more so that she could lose the weight. And so she definitely kind of teetered into some unhealthy patterns around food. But I think that's so common. Like, it's a very slippery slope when we're just looking at the calorie side of weight loss and things like that, and we're not addressing other issues. And so when she had come to work with me, she was actually referred by a functional medicine doctor that she had been working with. And she just felt like she was kind of at her wit's end. She's like, I just feel like I've tried everything. I feel like I've tried so hard to lose the weight again, or to keep it off, or to get it back off. And it just feels like the scale won't budge. And so we worked together. We're actually still working together. And, we worked on some things nutritionally. I got her into the gym, lifting weights consistently. And she was still kind of having some issues where she just wasn't seeing the scale move. And now, of course, like, I can only take my clients at their word, right? So I'm like, okay, here are some things to focus on. Are you doing those? Yes or no? And a lot of times we're like, yes, absolutely we are. And maybe we are, but sometimes we think we're doing, one thing, and really we forget about all these other things that are happening. And so really it just kind of came down to like her going through the motions and doing all of the right things, but not believing that it's going to work. Right? It's like, it doesn't matter what I do. There's something else wrong. There's something else going on. And the real transformation for her, and this is going to seem really counterintuitive, was when she actually stopped putting so much emphasis on the scale and on losing weight. Right. And she just kind of released the reins to that. She really leaned into trusting the process. And I think it was last week on our check-in, she's like, yeah, I haven't even really been on the scale. But my grandson, I think might be like 7 or 8. He was like, Grandma, you look like you've lost some weight. I can tell. And I'm really glad you're doing it the way that you want to live your life. And then, that same week, she had a couple other people at work kind of comment on it. And she was like, I didn't really notice anything. But then she went to put on some pants and she's like, they are so loose. Like, I hadn't tried them on. She had actually bought them because all of her other pants were too small. So she's like, I better go through and try some of these other clothes on to see. So I think the biggest transformation there, I mean, she still is on her weight loss journey, but the biggest transformation is that it's not something that is soul sucking and taking so much of her time and her energy. She's not constantly feeling defeated because she's not seeing, those immediate results. And she really has just kind of leaned in. She's trusting the process. She's working the process every day. And the results are happening, right? It's like so many of my clients are like, I've lost 10 pounds and it feels like I wasn't even trying. And it's like, that's the kind of weight loss that is going to be sustainable, is when it feels like it's something that, where it's like, this is the easiest weight I've ever lost. It's like, that is great. That means you're going to keep that off and you're going to keep going until you reach your goal. So I guess I love that.
Well, I do love to hear my guests talk about their clients, the people that they get to work with, because it is such an inspirational thing to see someone, just go into their journey, and then they have that moment where they're feeling a little hopeless, but then at the end of it, they just go work through it. And just because, like what you said, they trusted the process and they just continued doing it. They didn't stop. They took action. Now, for our guests or for our listeners today, is there a final piece of advice that you could share with them that they can absolutely, for sure, try out today to take action, to make sure that they are able to start off their journey?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like, again, there are so many different things that I could offer, but I think that if you haven't taken the time to do kind of some reflection on really like what's going on, especially if you feel like you're constantly working on a goal, or it's like you make some progress and then you feel like you're sort of backsliding, to really just spend some time exploring like what's going on, what's really the driving factor of this goal. I think for me, when I got really honest about why I was putting so much pressure on myself to achieve and accomplish certain things, at the very heart of it, it was coming from this place of not feeling enough. And so it was like, once I reach this, once I have this, then I'm going to feel enough and I'm going to feel okay with me. But that doesn't work. And so it's really just kind of exploring your heart and what's really driving you for these specific goals, especially if you notice that what you're doing isn't really sustainable. I think that's another trap that a lot of people fall into, is it's like they can commit to doing something until they reach the goal, but then it's like, okay, we go back to just living life the way, partially because it's not sustainable. So I think, check in with yourself, see if you can really get to the heart of why you're doing what you're doing. And then, asking like, is this the way that I want to live my life forever? Because if it's not, then it's not really going to be a winning strategy to get you to your goal in the first place.
Thank you so much again, Alisha, for joining us today, for all those wonderful tidbits of information and knowledge that you shared with our audience today. And for those of you listening, to the show today, if you are interested in learning more about Alisha's work and how she helps people, I will leave all of her wonderful details in the description box below. And again, thank you everyone. Thank you, Alisha, for joining us in today's podcast episode. Coach RKaye here, signing off, not before reminding you to never give up on your movement journey, because it's never too late to move. Bye guys. See you again next week.